looking up at the rising sun and knowing my window of time to return to Tithe was short. I could have turned my back and continued searching for one of older age. If I had the supply back home, perhaps I would have. But being picky with my prey was not a luxury I possessed, and I refused to return to Tithe without what I needed. Blood. To be more specific, vampire blood. I had made sure the vampire's death was as swift as I could gift it. It had hardly a chance to scream in terror before I pounced into the shadows of the cellar, straddled it, and then drove the stake into its heart. Even after years of the hunt, the sound of wood through flesh turned my stomach. It was wet and loud, like the smacking of lips as a greedy watcher chewed on meat. I sat there for a moment, watching the pale colouring of the child's skin darken, as though years of rotting caught up to it within seconds. Guilt stabbed through me, but only for a moment. It was all I allowed. Reaching for my leather belt, I tore the short dagger from its sheath, alongside 2 glass vials I kept in a pouch as easily accessible as my weapon. "Sorry," I muttered, taking the dagger and lifting the blade toward the creature's throat. With a keen, swift slice, the flesh tore open and dark, pinkish gore splashed across the vampire's chest. "At least you have found peace," I told the corpse, as its cold, thin blood poured over my hands as I filled the vials to their rim. There was a time I used to fill more than a couple of glass vials at a time, but then my sister grew older, and her eyes sharpened alongside her mind. She was inquisitive, which I had convinced myself was a bad thing. Sometimes those with watching stares noticed flaws as though it were their gift. Oriole could not discover my greatest secret. The pale colour of the blood and its almost transparent texture revealed the vampire had not fed in a while, likely because of the absence of prey. Humans who were lucky enough to survive since the curse of the vampire spread across the world now lived within walled communities like Tithe. For years, the bloodthirsty creatures had little but vermin and wild beasts to feast from. This child was certainly a victim to starvation. But regardless, its blood would do. It would serve its required purpose. Once the vials were filled, the vampire's corpse melted beneath me, staining the ground in a puddle of bones and mush. 2 was not as much as I had hoped to get, but it would do. It would keep me from needing to leave Tithe for a month or so. 2 vials for 2 blissful and painless months. Only then I would have to hunt again. I left the bakery's cellar and the melted stain of death in my wake. Vials tucked carefully into the pouch at my waist, the knife gripped in my hand. Who knew when another vampire would take their opportunity to show themselves to me? The world beyond was quiet, almost peaceful. I walked the empty, forgotten streets of Darkmourn, cutting down the main cobbled pathways with my bounty bumping against my hip. Only the clink of the full flasks and my padding footsteps gave me company as I began my return to Tithe. I could hardly imagine what life was like for the occupants of this town before the curse had spread, but one thing I was certain of was they had something I did not. Freedom. Must have been nice. I admired the wall-less view around Darkmourn, looking towards the faint outline of rolling hills and the dense forests which filled the horizon for miles. Even the towering, charred remains of Castle Dread did not displease me. I drank it all in every time I came, hoping the vision would sustain me until my next visit. Tithe was not like this. It was not a place of freedom like the outside world. It was surrounded by a wall so high it blocked out the view of anything and everything beyond it. Many of Tithe's occupants hardly cared for the world beyond the walls, but I did. Even when I did not need to leave to get blood, I longed to step outside, if only for a moment, just to see, to look around and to let my eyes stretch for as far as they desired. Trading freedom for safety was the price to pay for being kept alive. Most felt it was a fair trade. I was still not convinced. The coughing began as I stood knee-deep in a shallow leak closest to Tithe's boundary, scrubbing the vampire's melted flesh from my leather breeches until the body of water turned grey. The sound was terrible.